A video I have been meaning to make for some time now is a dark academia reading vlog because DA books, murder, mystery, it's my favorite genre, and therefore I thought it would be a really good video because I read a lot of books and I have no one to talk about these books with. So since we are reading DA today, I have taken you to my favorite place in my home, and that is my bookshelf, which is my little library. That's what I like to call it. So the first book I'm going to read is Black Chalk by Christopher J. Yates, and I recommended this in my books that are most similar to The Secret History, and I said in that video I actually haven't read it. I've read the first few chapters and I liked it, and it seemed very spot on to a DA book I would love. It was only ever meant to be a game played by 6 best friends in their first year at Oxford University, a game of consequences. But then the game changed. The stakes grew higher and the dares more personal and more humiliating, finally evolving into a vicious struggle with unpredictable and tragic results. Now, 14 years later, the remaining players must meet again for the final round. Who knows better than your best friends what would break you? Black Chalk is perfect for fans of the high tension and expert pacing of The Secret History and the Bellwether revivals, which I loved both of those books. I think the most intriguing part about this book, besides the fact that it's DA, is I just want to know what this game is that they're playing. I mean, the whole concept sounds very intriguing, especially with this added game element, and because the author said that it is partly inspired by his own time at Oxford University, and I'm just thinking, like, what did you do at Oxford? I want to read and find out. Okay, so let's move on to the next book. Next book I'm going to read is actually one I just got from the library. I was really lucky to find this, and I saw the cover and I thought, this is so perfect. So this is by J.T. Ellison and it's called Good Girls Lie. So I picked it up and turns out it's totally a dark academia novel. This is what it's about. The Good School in Marchburg, Virginia is a prestigious prep school whose elite status, traditions, and honorary code are ideal for preparing exceptional young women for brilliant futures. But a stranger has come to good, and what is growing at this Ivy League school has turned poisonous. No one questions the cruelties of the secret societies or the dubious behavior of the privileged students, but when a popular student is found dead, the truth cannot be ignored. But look closely, because there are truths and there are lies, and then there's everything that really happened. Now, I have never heard of this book before finding it. I did look up the reviews. They weren't too bad, actually. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this one a go. Hopefully it's a new dark academia book I can recommend to you, and if you've read it, also let me know in the comments. And the last book that I plan to read for this reading vlog is going to be the second book of the Inheritance Games, and that is The Hawthorne Legacy. If you've read the first one, The Inheritance Games, it is very much DA. It marks off everything that a dark academia novel would need, and I really liked it. So I've been wanting to read the second book, I just haven't gotten around to it, so I thought this was the perfect time to actually make myself do it. If you don't know what the first book is about, it's about a girl, a normal girl, who comes to inherit $1 billion from this guy she's never met before, and she doesn't know why. But in order for her to actually inherit the money, she must stay on the estate in Texas and live with the entire family for a year. I'm excited to read the second one and be able to talk about it with someone because I just had so much to say about the first one and I couldn't talk about it. So these are the 3 books that I plan to read for this reading vlog. I have a week, less than a week, to get them all done. Hopefully I can finish them all. That's the goal. So the first book I'm going to start with, because this is the one I'm really dying to get through, is Black Chalk. I guess I'm gonna film myself kind of reading here and there. It's not gonna be a fully aesthetic video. I'm gonna be out and about doing things, reading book, like whenever I get the chance to read, I'm gonna be reading. So, and I'm gonna try to get through half this book. That's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna just read, baby. Yeah, that's right. Let's do it. Okay, look out. Oh, welcome to day 1 of my reading vlog. It is 7 o'clock at night right now. It gets dark here around 9. I'm gonna go to the pool. The times that I read the most is always when I'm on vacation, and I feel like a pool is very reminiscent of that, so I felt like it was a very good way to encourage myself to read. Also, I do have an actual computer job, so I'm trying to make time to read during the day, so that way I'm not wasting my time working during the day. Hi. I'm not at the pool yet. I just ate a piece of toast and I was sitting down reading the first page of the book, and I hate to say something about it so soon, but I just have to. On the first page, because I've only read one page, this man says that he has not been outside of his apartment for 3 years straight. He says, and then crossing the room, I opened my curtains for the first time in 3 years because now he has found me, tracked me down, and there remains no good reason to stay hidden for any longer. The quantity of time I have spent inside this apartment has averaged 23 hours and 59 minutes each day. I'm a hermit, but now I intend to grow stronger. I must ready myself for the impending visit of an ancient friend. Now you intend to grow stronger? I'm sorry, if you have been locked in your apartment for 3 years, you need therapy. You need someone to help you. You wouldn't just be like, getting my stuff together. Now, 3 years later, brain just changed. It would not happen like that. You would actually need help. I'm sorry, I just had to talk about it. Hello, it is Friday. It's about 5 o'clock. This book is a lot longer than I thought. It's 350 pages. I thought it was 250, so now I'm like, I need to get through a big chunk of this today. So the first thing I don't really love about this book is that it doesn't have chapters. It has some markings, but there's not actually chapters in this, which is kind of weird. It's almost like I'm just reading continuously on and I'm not really reaching anything and I'm not really hitting any goals. I'm only on page 43, but I finally just got to the section of the book where it tells you what this game is that they've been talking about. So the game is a game of consequences. I'm not giving anything away by saying that. It says it on the back of the book. It says silly forfeits, childish dares, and that's pretty much what has been described so far. Things that might be really embarrassing or things that might just ruin someone's self-esteem, which I really don't understand the purpose of this game. Maybe it's just a guy thing that they would come up with this, but I would never consider that a fun game to play. And whoever makes it to the end of all of the dares wins a sum of money. Now, if you remember what I said yesterday based off the first line of how he had never left his apartment in the past 3 years, it has gone into a bit more detail about his mental state and how messed up he actually is. So it does feel a little more realistic. As I continued reading on, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a coffee shop right now and read as much as I can. I'm gonna drink a coffee. It's raining outside. Seems like the perfect time to read, and I'm gonna try to get through at least half of this book. Let's try to get to page 200. Can I do it? I hope so. Got home, and on the way here I was thinking about the book. I just feel like the game is not as detrimental as I feel it should be. Players are quitting and not wanting to do dares that to me don't seem too bad. They're not great, but it's definitely not game ending. I am struggling a bit on some sections because, as I mentioned before, there's no chapters. There's literally an entire section where it doesn't say who is talking and it never explains who it is. And I don't know if that's intentional, but it just seems like a really important part of the book. But I think my favorite scenes so far would have to be them sitting down and talking about the game and the consequences and playing the actual game. That is my favorite part of it so far. There's been a lot of in-between stuff that hasn't really been too eventful. I just wish there was a little bit more, you know? I'm over halfway through the book, so we're doing good. I just finished reading another dare and I am so disappointed. I thought it was getting good. I thought something crazy was gonna happen and it was such a disappointment. It was not a crazy dare. I mean, it's a little rude of his friends. I think it makes it worse because they don't tell you what the consequence is. They just say like, oh, rehearsing the scene for later tonight. Can't wait to see it play out. And it seems like this huge thing and then it happens and you're like, wait, did it happen yet? That's kind of how I felt. I'm just wondering how deep into this book I need to go until I start reading some really crazy dares because that's what I was expecting, but it hasn't happened yet. So, yeah. Hello. Good morning. I got these almond croissants from Trader Joe's. I'm super excited to try them. It's like one of my favorite things. Oh my gosh. Wow. That is just like getting it from a good cafe. I felt like I needed some coffee before sitting down to talk about this book because I finished it last night and I'm not raving about it at the moment. And I feel pretty bad because this is one of the books that I recommended on my Dark Academia reading list, books most similar to The Secret History. And I will have to agree that the group dynamic, the friends being super close, that does fit it. It's also set in Oxford. I mean, yeah, it does fit it. It's just not as good as The Secret History. I mean, what is as good as The Secret History? One thing that I feel this book definitely lacked was character development. And there were two characters out of the 6 students that I did enjoy reading about. They had such a distinct way of talking and bickering with one another that if I had all 6 students on one page talking at once, I could tell them apart from the rest just based off of the way they spoke. Another thing that I feel it definitely lacked was the descriptions of the environment. There were no detailed descriptions of Oxford, and that was something I was really craving because I love Oxford. I love books that are placed in this setting. When I read The Discovery of Witches, they did such a good job at really describing the scene and her canoeing down the river and the Bodleian Library, and you could really see in detail what it would look like in your head, and this just did not do that for me. Even when they went to bars around Oxford, it would give names of places, but it just did not describe them in enough detail for me to get a visual. You're reading words, so you really need that visual to kind of piece the story together and make it enjoyable. Another thing I will say about this is that the consequences, this game that they hype up throughout the whole story, is not as crazy as it seems, which is such a letdown. They would talk about the consequences, they wouldn't say what it was. They would just talk it up prior to it happening, and then it would happen and you would see it play out. And sometimes you wouldn't even see it play out in full, which was pointless. And it would not be nearly as bad as you thought. And then at another point, you see all of Jolion's consequences being played back to back to back to back, but you don't see anyone else that is left in the game and what they are doing, which the whole point of the book was the game. The story was there and the plot was so good, it just was not executed properly. And another thing is they don't even get to the games in this book until about 100 pages in. It was a big game of waiting around. That was the game. The game was waiting for the game to happen. But last night, before I went to bed, I actually did start reading this book, Good Girls Lie, and I'm on page 47. And let me say, I already love it. I feel so involved in this girl's life reading this book. And also the setting up of the environment is so detailed and descriptive that I feel as if I'm there. I have an actual visual. Sometimes authors will write something and it's written in a way that I don't get the visual the way they probably did, but this I do. Also, I got a big text version of this book, so I have about 650 pages to get through. Oh my gosh. So it is now 8:30 at night. I've been working and I've had cramps, so I've been working in bed. And I'm still in bed because I still have cramps. So I figured what better thing to do when you have cramps than read, because I'm not getting out of bed right now. I just kind of feel like crap. Yeah, I'm gonna try to reach page 100, maybe 150. I don't know, we're gonna see. Let's just start reading. It is Monday at 1:30 p.m. and I have been reading the past few days. I just didn't feel the need to document every second of it just because I didn't really have anything to say yet, but now I do. I'm about halfway through Good Girls Lie and I love this book. I think that this is one of the most underrated dark academia novels I have read thus far, and it came out in 2020. It's recently new, and I don't know how many people know about this book, but I did not, and I look up DA books all the time. Never saw this one. You know when you read a book and you sit it down for a second, but you're just so excited to pick it up and start reading again because you want to know what's going to happen next? That is how I felt with this book the entire time. I really need someone else to chime in here though, if you've read it, or if you're going to read it, or if you read it after this video. Let me know if I'm crazy in loving this book, because I don't know, it just speaks to me. In this book, you get everything that marks off my dark academia list. You get murder, you get the school environment, you get those elite group of students, you get kids that come from extreme wealth, and there's also secret societies, and it's all set on a school campus. It's honestly everything I've wanted from a DA novel. I've read a lot of them that have a school environment, but maybe it doesn't take place entirely at a school. The only one I can think of that I have read that's kind of similar is A Deadly Education, except that has fantasy. You do get the school environment. You feel like you are going day to day with this girl through her classes, the teachers, the bullies, lunchtime, going off campus and doing things. Like, you get that full school experience. Now, this book does take place at a high school, but there are secret societies within this high school. These girls are hand-selected that are able to go here. They have to audition. They also have to be extremely talented within one specific thing that they can excel at within the school. But I think the most interesting thing about this book has to be the way that the book starts out. So you find right away that someone has been murdered, but then it goes back in time and the protagonist ends up being the girl that was brutally murdered. So when you see how she was murdered and then you start reading about her going to the school and her past and everything she's been through, it's very upsetting. Like, I'm upset. I don't want this person to die. Why does this person get killed? What did she do? I've never read a book from that perspective, so it's really interesting. I also wish the book was longer because I feel like there could be a continuation of the story, but I know it's going to end. I just love the whole setting of this school, and the societies are pretty crazy. I've never read anything like it. I'm just so impressed by this novel so far. I'm gonna try to finish this tonight just because I wanna start the 𝚌𝚘𝚘𝚔 Legacy and finish that by Wednesday. So I have 3 days to do that. It is 10:13 at night on Monday, and I am 568 pages through the book. I have been so shocked up to this point. Stuff finally started happening. I mean, stuff was happening. I don't know why I said stuff wasn't happening. I am just shocked. I did not expect for the book to go where it's going, but I think I'm gonna finish this up tonight and then talk about it tomorrow morning. I was going to talk about this in the morning because I just finished, but I have to talk about it now because what? So remember how I told you that in the beginning, the protagonist is found dead? And then it goes to the past and you read from the protagonist's point of view, the dead girl's point of view, and you think it's leading up to how she dies. The end of the book, she doesn't die. Like it never wraps around back to that part. So I reread it and I'm like, wait, did I read this wrong? And I've read it multiple times and no, it literally says the girl's name. Ash, that her name's Ashlyn. So I'm just really confused. It makes no sense. We finished Good Girls Lie. I have quite a bit to say. So essentially this book is about a girl named Ashlyn who goes to a boarding school in America because her parents have died and she is just trying to escape the fact that her parents have died. It's very rough for her in London. And so she goes to an all-girls boarding school to get an education to hopefully go to Harvard. While she's at this boarding school, she hides her identity because her and the dean think it's for the best. So that way she doesn't have to mention the fact of her parents dying and bring up something that is very traumatic to her and her past. Then she ends up getting tapped by a secret society within the school and they go through a whole hazing process that most of the teachers and the dean are in on. Like they know that hazing, not hazing specifically, but they know that there are secret societies and they believe it's a good thing. And so they have let it continue on thinking they aren't doing anything that's harmful or illegal, but in fact, they are. I just haven't read a dark academia novel where you were actually in a secret society. It's always like, you know there's a secret society in the school, but you're not in it and you're not invited into it. But this book, you actually get to be in it. So when you think of a cult, it would definitely be Ivy Bound for sure. It's definitely cult-like. This book almost reminds me of the movie Inception. It is very spot on. Like last night, going to bed, and even this morning, I was thinking about the ending. I just don't know what to conclude based off of what I've read. And I guess that's kind of good. And I think every person will have a different interpretation of, I don't want to give spoilers away. I just think you should read it. Normally, I don't really enjoy reading books that take place in high school just because I'm older and I can't really relate. I mean, I can. I've been to high school. But there's things that can't happen when you're in high school that can happen when you're in college, you know? But in this book, it does not matter. It feels like you're reading a book that takes place on a college campus just because of the way it's set up and how mature these girls are. There are a few parts of the dialogue where it didn't make sense to me. And I think it has to do with the fact that the girl is coming from London. Maybe she has a certain dialect. I'm not entirely sure if that's what it was, but I think that's what it was. But there is one major flaw, I think, in this book, and it really threw me off, and that's the first chapter. I will read it to you. Let me know if I'm crazy, but the way that this is written makes it sound like the person that's dead is Ash. They speak to Dean Westhaven, who quietly, breathlessly admits she has approached the body and has no idea who it might be. She's lying, though. She knows. Of course she knows. It was inevitable. They say her name in an unbroken chain of accusation and misery. Ash, Ash, Ash. Does that not sound like they are saying the person that is dead is Ash? Or am I getting this wrong? Because the person that's dead is not Ash. So maybe... Hold up, wait, maybe the author knew, maybe that was intentional. If it was intentional to kind of confuse you to read the story as if you were reading it from the person's perspective of the girl who died, then maybe I would be like, okay, good job to the author, because it did really confuse me. I'm still gonna give it 5 stars just because the whole plot of the story was so good. It was so entertaining. But now that I've finished the book in its entirety, this book is, I can't really give away too much of what the book is about without spoiling it for you, although I can't really spoil it because I honestly don't know how it ended still. It's kind of like Verity. That is how it's written. So if you like endings like that, then you'll want to pick up this one. But I would love for you to read it and let me know your thoughts and let me know if I'm like crazy for loving this book, but I just did. And now we're going to be moving on into the last book of this video, and that is Hawthorne Legacy. And I actually started last night. I didn't get too far and I'm only on page 8. And it's picking up where it left off in the last book. So I'm excited to see what happens because it's still kind of up in the air what happened based off of the last book. I don't want to ruin it if you haven't read it, but yeah. It is Wednesday, and I am officially 200 pages through the Hawthorne Legacy. I decided to finish quite a bit last night because I knew today was my last day to actually finish the book, so I was getting through it. So in terms of this compared to the first book, I actually am enjoying this one better. And the first book really seemed to drag on, and although there was this major storyline it was following, it did feel a bit confusing to me at some points. This book is really packed of information. I felt like the book before was a lot of trying to figure things out and figuring things out, but you were still kind of like confused. This book, you're learning a lot, so you're not going through the book extremely confused. You are interacting with certain characters and seeing certain things that pop up, and you're knowing right away how it connects to the story, which I find to be easier for me to get through because as I'm reading, I'm looking for those things. Reaching around page 200, it started really picking up, and I found myself wanting to read and turn to the next page to find out what was going to happen. There are definitely more adventures in this book. There are lots of old money moments in this that just scream absurd wealth. I also decided to give Grayson and Jameson faces. I decided to typecast them because it felt very confusing. I felt their personalities, they are different. The dialogue is definitely different, but I did decide to finally typecast Jameson and Grayson to put faces to what I was reading to make it feel more realistic, and I decided to make Jameson Thomas Doherty. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but if you've seen him in anything, you'll know that he fits that character so well, just in his mannerisms and the way he acts. And I made Grayson Nicholas this guy. It definitely made reading it more interesting to me, and it made the conflict that Avery would have deciding between the two boys harder, and that made it more realistic. So I think that adding a face to the characters makes reading so much better, and I don't know why I didn't do that to start. Yeah, I like it now. I also found that I am obsessed with the character Max, which is Avery's best friend. I think the way that her dialogue is written is so realistic. Every time she pops up in the book, I'm just smiling and laughing at her dialogue. It is so good. So props to the author for writing her so well. There has been a lot of jaw-dropping moments in this book where I've just been like, are you kidding me? So I think that's a good reaction to have. I love when a book can evoke certain emotions. It definitely has, there's been some drama, that is for sure. And there's also been some other moments where I'm like sweating a little in the best way possible. But I, so far, am really enjoying this book. I can't wait to see where it goes. I'm kind of nervous. Finally finished. As often as I hear this book mentioned and they always talk about this love triangle, I feel like the love triangle really is not a dominant part of this book. So if you're going into the series wanting to read about a love triangle that is strong, I wouldn't say this is the series. There's just too many other things happening in this novel, and that is the last priority. And this book also reminded me of We Were Liars. If you've read it, you'll understand why. But yeah, it totally reminded me of We Were Liars a little bit. We're gonna go over the rest of them just one more time, and I'm definitely going to go back to talking about Black Chalk. And I'm back again to say I stand firm with my original opinion that this book just wasn't that great. Now we're gonna go into the spoiler part of this video. If you have read it and you want to hear spoilers, or you haven't read it and you don't don't really care to read it because of how I'm talking about it, then continue watching, or you can click ahead so you don't have to hear what I'm about to say. Okay, are you here for the spoilers? Cool. I commend you for sticking around. The game. Let's talk about the game. So I don't really understand GameSock. I really don't. They put in a bunch of money to make this game possible, right? And they have small, medium, and tall, whatever their freaking names are, kind of refereeing the game as it's happening in the dares to make sure they're doing what they say they're going to do. Towards the end of the novel, when those people end up coming back, I'm like, what is this? The freaking mafia? They're coming back. Oh, you have to play. Well, what are they gonna do to you? Kill you? Like, no, it's just a stupid game. That just didn't make sense to me. Why that happened at the end of the book, it made no sense. And then Jolyon and Chad are going head to head in the game at the very end, and they both feel like they can't quit because they have to win. And here's the other thing that did not make sense. So when you're playing the game, you can quit the game at any time. And if you do your dare and then you quit the game, you get your deposit back. But if you quit when you get a dare because you don't want to do the dare, then you don't get it back. But then they also gave back someone else's money because she didn't want to do the dare and she got a veto. But then when Mark didn't want to do his dare, they want to give him back his money. I'm like, this makes no sense. These are supposed to be your friends. And I think the idea was there, but the game wasn't. And you know, on the front of the book it says 1 game, 6 students, 5 survivors. Well, the death of the student doesn't come until I think like 30 pages until the book is over, and that was just way too long for that to happen. And not to mention, the guy wasn't even playing the game anymore. It had nothing to do with the game. He followed his friend to the roof because his friend was threatening to jump off the roof. But that guy, the other guy, Mark, was not playing the game. He had been out of the game trying to get his money back from his friends. Okay, that's it for the spoiler portion of this video and my rant about Black Chalk. Now it's time to rate my favorite book out of all 3 that I read this weekend, and that has to go to Good Girls Lie. This book has to be one of the most underrated dark academia novels I have ever randomly found on a bookshelf in the library. Like, I cannot believe I just happened to stumble across this and it ended up being as good as it was. So after thinking about it and reading that first chapter again and again and again, trying to figure out what the author was trying to do, I think that was an intentional play, because as I was reading it, it definitely made me view everything that was happening much differently. It made me view Ashlyn's story in a whole new light and have sympathy for her and everything she was going through and everything she was doing. When I got to the end of the story and crazy things started happening, it made it that much better. And then when I got to the very end, I still don't know. I still don't know what happened. I've thought about it and I still don't know. The back of the book truly says nothing about what is going on in this book. This is definitely my new favorite book. Please read it. Let me know your thoughts on it. Hopefully you guys like it too and it's not just me, but if it is just me, that's fine because I enjoyed it. Now moving on to my second favorite book, and I guess you will probably guess what it is because we already know Black Chalk has made it last on the list. I'm sorry. And that is The Hawthorne Legacy, the second book of the Inheritance games. I mean, you can't really go wrong with a series that's doing good. Of course it's going to be good. It's not gonna be a bad book. I like this one better than the first. But if you've read the first and the second and the third, let me know which one of those is your favorite, because I'm going to move on to the third and final book in the series. And it's also apparently going to be a TV series, which I'm super excited for because I told you my typecast and I'm curious as to who they're going to choose for the brothers. Oh my gosh, stop. I'm so excited. And the last book on my list is Black Chalk. You look at this cover and you're like, this is the most beautiful DA cover I've ever seen. It meets all the requirements of a DA book. It's just not the best because of the game. But I have seen other people review this book that really enjoyed it. You could love it and I could hate it, or I could love it and you could hate it, or we could both love it, you know? So I think sometimes you just have to find out on your own whether you're going to like something or not, and that kind of goes with everything in life. That is it for my entire reading vlog. Thanks so much for watching if you made it to the end of this video. I know this is probably really difficult to watch because this is my first time doing this type of video, and I feel like it was just a lot of talking about the book, and I guess that's the point of a vlog, right? But I really don't know because I've never filmed one before, so hopefully it wasn't too boring. And if you've read any of the books that I read in this video today, feel free to drop a comment below. Let's have a discussion about it. I have no one to talk about these books with except you. I guess that's it for this video. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope I didn't bore you too much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.